All right, hello and welcome back to online English class. Today we are going to continue getting ready for your Unit 5 test, which is going to be issued to you tomorrow on Thursday, and you are going to be writing and turning in by Friday at 3 p.m. Okay, so you will be turning your test in by Friday at 3 p.m. An email will go to you and also to your parent with an attachment of the test and the instructions for submitting the test tomorrow. Okay, so stay tuned for all of that information that is to come. Um, as it stands, you need to continue drafting your sonnet, and obviously you need to continue preparing for your Unit 5 test. All right, so today what we're going to do is we are going to turn our attention away from the sonnet, which you should continue working on. All right, it seems like you guys are diligently working on that. And to the explication, the other 50% of your test. Okay, so the second portion of your test is going to require you to analyze one of the poems on the following list. If you are in regular English 2, you may choose one. You may choose the poem on this list that you want to analyze. Now, obviously, we didn't do Kubla Khan by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. We had to cut that part out of the curriculum. So you can mark that one off your list. And I would just recommend, if you're regular, don't worry about Kubla Khan. Okay, it's super complicated and crazy. So just don't worry about it. Choose from either The Tiger, The Sick Rose, The World is Too Much With Us, Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, or The Solitary Reaper. Okay, so all those are excellent choices. If you are in honors, you choose. If you are if you are in regular, you choose. If you are in regular, you choose. I said that wrong. Let me reiterate. If you are in regular, you choose. If you're in honors, I'm going to choose for you on the day of the test and then issue the test to you. Okay, so you need to be ready to talk intelligently about any of these poems. All right, so what is the explication going to be formatted like? Okay, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to make 2 to 3 observations about the poem's meter or sound and how the poem's meter or sound develops the meaning of the poem in that area. Okay, you can discuss any of these devices. Meter, right? So you can describe the ways in which the poet is using meter and rhythm in order to develop meaning. All right, we talked primarily about iambic meter and trochaic substitutions or trochaic meters as well in The Tiger. You can talk about alliteration and assonance, repetition of consonant sounds, repetition of vowel sounds, cacophony. All right, those are violent kinds of sounds, harsh kinds of sounds, the kind of sound that you would hear if you threw a pan down a stairwell, right, as it banged and clanged and crashed down the stairs. Those are what we would call in English cacophonous sounds, or also euphonic sounds. Okay, those are pretty sounds. And then you can also talk about rhyme. Okay, whether it be rhyme scheme or the use of internal rhyme or slant rhyme or I rhyme to develop meaning. Okay, so your job here is to offer 2 to 3 observations about the poem's meter or sound. Okay, so in your response, you need to, okay, and this is going to be written in prose. This is going to be written in essay form, just so you know, okay? You need to offer a textual citation, all right, and contextualize it. So in The World is Too Much With Us, octet, in line 4, right, Wordsworth breaks the conventional rhythm of an Italian sonnet by adding an extra syllable, an 11th syllable to the line, whenever he says that we are out of tune with nature. Okay, so there you are contextualizing the quotation, identifying the poetic device at work. So you're talking about meter. Okay, you're talking about rhythm. And then you need to analyze the effect of that choice on the meaning of the poem. Okay? So, for example, you might want to consider In the World is Too Much With Us, all right, in this line, all right, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 lines down at the end of the octet, all right, Wordsworth concludes the octet before the volta, before the sestet begins, before he changes his tone and begins moving back to metrical regularity, back into harmony, right? He says, for this, for everything, we are out of tune. So we've got a trochaic substitution, out of, and then tune, a sixth foot, an 11th syllable, okay? So you should know that a sonnet is supposed to have how many feet per line? 5 feet, 5 disyllabic feet, 10 syllables, written in iambic pentameter. Okay, here Wordsworth adds an 11th syllable. Why? Because the line, very much like the speaker's soul and modern society as a whole, is out of tune. The line is out of tune, even as our hearts or our souls are out of tune with what the speaker would say our real power is, which is our ability to connect spiritually to the world around us. Okay, getting and spending has thrown us out of tune. And again, another observation you can make is the trochaic substitution here, getting and spending. All right, so this foot right here should be iambic, but it, like this word, is ready, out of tune. So does the word little. Okay, and all of these substitutions juxtapose all of these tuneless, unharmonious, unconventional lines, all right, juxtapose the metrical euphony or the metrical perfection of the sestet whenever the speaker brings his mind back to nature, which he believes, despite modern society's attempt to rationalize all aspects of the world, he believes is endued with spiritual meaning. Okay, it's got Proteus is rising from the sea, Triton is blowing his wreathed horn. All right, in other words, the natural world means something. Okay, that it's spiritually alive. Okay, so these lines are metrically perfect. These lines are metrically unharmonious or out of tune. That would suffice there if I gave you the world is too much with us for your test. Those would be excellent observations about meter. Okay, so once again, you want to make sure that you're citing a specific piece of text. Okay, so in the 8th line of Wordsworth's sonnet, "The world is too much with us late and soon," Wordsworth adds a 6th foot, all right, to the line, which introduces an 11th syllable that is out of tune or unconventional or breaks the rules of the conventions of an Italian sonnet. He does this because, and then you would get into your analysis, right? Does that make sense? So you're explaining how it develops the meaning of the poem in the second portion. You're commenting on the textual observation you've made. Okay, so it doesn't just have to be about meter. All of your observations don't have to be about meter. You could make observations about meter. You could make observations about rhyme. You could make observations about alliteration or cacophony or euphony. It all depends on what particular poem you're looking at. All right, so there's tons of cacophonous, really violent sounds in the tiger, right? Tiger, tiger, burning bright. All of those are sort of explosive or violent kinds of sounds that are cacophonous, that are violent, and that point to the sort of sublime, violent power of the creator who made the tiger. Okay? So, once again, these are just examples that you can think about, but from all these different poems, right? The tiger, you could talk about the tiger's meter and pattern and trochaic meter to establish a sort of aggressive or front-footed kind of meter. You could talk about the euphonic images in Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, in which the speaker is describing the sort of beauty, the peace, of London, which he as a romantic is supposed to view as sort of this horrible place, but he recognizes, okay, that beauty can be found in an urban environment for those who seek it out, for those who live in tune who live open to the fields, who live open to an urban space that has also preserved its natural beauty and its natural harmony. Okay. You could also consider the solitary reaper as it uses the internal rhyme, talking about reaping and singing, and talking about the connectivity of those two kinds of actions. You could talk about the I rhyme used in the sick rose between worm and storm, and then the exact rhyme in the end of the poem between joy and destroy, okay, which establishes those connections between the joy that the invisible worm, that the enemy of the rose takes in watching it burn, watching it die. Okay, so those are all different examples of ways that you can pay attention to the meter or the sound of a poem. Now, what about diction, imagery, and figurative language? Okay, well, when we talk about diction, now I list allusion, denotation, connotation, and juxtaposition just because those are useful things to think about. But when we're talking about analyzing word choice, I mean, man, it is an open game. All right, you can talk about the connotations or suggestive meaning of any relevant word choice in the poem. Okay, so you could talk about the connotations of the word reaper in the solitary reaper. You could talk about the juxtaposition of the parallel verbs reaping and singing in correspondence with the use of internal rhyme, so that you could build on your observation down here. You could talk about the parallel relationship between cuts and binds in the solitary reaper. You could talk about Wordsworth's allusion to Proteus and Triton in The World Is Too Much With Us Late and Soon. You could consider the juxtaposition of the connotations of the tiger and the lamb in the tiger, and why what both of those animals sort of mean suggestively. All right. What the connotations. You could talk about the connotations of the word powers in The World Is Too Much With Us Late and Soon, when Wordsworth talks about laying waste our powers. You could talk about the euphonic image of the sea bearing her bosom to the moon, which is both an example of figurative language, all right, and personification, because the sea doesn't obviously have a body, but the sort of metaphorical comparison of the sea to a woman opening herself up in intimate connection to the moon. There is just an image of natural harmony, natural togetherness there that is used once again to illustrate the ways in which we have broken away from that nurturing figure, our what Wordsworth would call our mother earth, even. Okay, so that's romantic kind of speak. So identifying various, depending on the poem, right? So whatever poem you get, you're going to be analyzing that poem's use of meter and sound, and also its language, all right? Looking specifically at its diction, its imagery, and its figurative language, all right? Now, after you do that, so 2 to 3 textual observations, okay? You're going to identify the poetic device at work, and then analyze its effect on that particular portion of the poem, or what is the effect of the meaning of the poem. And then you're going to move on to discussing the speaker of the poem as a whole. Talk about, you're going to interpret how the speaker of the poem is developed, their attitude, their perspective is developed through the course of the poem. So obviously the speaker of the poem in the tiger, right, is responding to, okay, the meaning of the existence of the tiger, right? What that means and how that shapes his theology, right? So you would talk about how the speaker is characterized or developed, and their attitude, their worldview, their tone is developed toward the central concerns or central objects in the poem. Like, for instance, the speaker in the solitary reaper, right? How is he developed? Okay, how is he characterized? All right, then you're going to talk about the major symbols in the poem. All right, so what's the major symbol, the central symbol of the poem, The Tiger? The tiger. What's the central symbol in the poem, The Solitary Reaper? The solitary reaper, right? What's the central symbol in the poem Upon Westminster Bridge, right? Composed upon Westminster Bridge. London, all right, as a symbol of urban environments as a whole, or a city life, okay? What's the central symbols of the sick rose? The rose and the worm, okay? So identifying what those central symbols mean, all right? And then finally, you're going to develop a theme statement, okay? What does the poem as a whole mean? What is the main idea? Okay, so in the poem, Wordsworth suggests that, or in the poem, Blake illustrates X about the nature of Y. Okay, so your job in the end is to use your textual observations to build into logical interpretations about the voice, the symbols, and the main idea of the poem. All right. So, should there be a connection between the textual analysis that you do here and the interpretations that you draw here, here, and here? Yes. All right. Your interpretations about voice, your interpretations about symbolism, your interpretations about theme need to be connected to your specific observations of the poetic style at work. Okay? So, what I've offered you today is some examples of things that you can pay attention to. Obviously, if you're in the honors class, you need to be ready to go through this process for all the poems. What I would recommend doing, all right, what I would recommend doing is for each poem, starting here, okay, be ready, practice writing the main idea, the theme of each poem. And if you don't know the theme of the poem, okay, ask someone in your class. If you don't remember or you don't have a reasonable reading of the theme of the poem, okay, go back to your notes, all right? Talk about it with the people that are in your class with you until you can make an accurate, coherent theme statement about the poem's central subject, the main idea. Then make sure that you can articulate the meaning of each of the dominant symbols. Now, the symbol, your interpretation of symbols, is it going to be closely related to the interpretation of theme? Yes. Okay, absolutely. So, like for instance, you might, if you were analyzing the Solitary Reaper, you say, what is the central symbol of the poem? You would say the Solitary Reaper, who embodies a romantic understanding of beauty. What's the theme of the poem? It is fleshing out what a romantic understanding of beauty is. Okay. So, according to Wordsworth, or for Wordsworth, beauty is, right? And then you would get into all of those things that Wordsworth illustrates that about the nature of beauty in that poem. Okay. So, for what I would do is I would start from the biggest idea and then work backwards until I had in my mind I knew what observations I was going to be what observations I was going to make for each poem if I were required to do that. I would bounce these also off people in my class. Make sure that what I'm saying makes sense to them. Make sure that what I'm saying makes sense to me. And so that way, whenever it comes time to actually write the test, you already know exactly what you're going to say and exactly where you're going, and you can build a reasonable, coherent analysis. Okay? Hope you guys have an excellent day. That's all I have for you today. Go through that process. Start working on that explication format for each one of those poems. All right? Take it easy.